So yeah, and everything seemed to be going great, and then I ended up losing the transmission in my car one day, so I started like staying with him for like a couple weeks so I could take him to work and use his car to get down to work. And he had just started a new job. He needed to wake up at like 2, 3 a.m. He was going crabbing for a job. And I was trying to make sure that he remembered to set his alarm. So I got on his phone to check to see if he set his alarm, and I noticed his lock wasn't the same. So I tried like a different code. And by that time, he woke up, saw that his phone was in my hand, and he grabbed me, slammed me down on the bed, and just started choking me, calling me a nosy, calling me every name he could think of, telling me I should die, all kinds of stuff.
Well, hold on. How long had y'all been dating before that started happening?
So at this point, we started dating at the end of not at the end of January, at the end of October, and this was January.
So 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. 3 months in.
The switch in 3 months.
He was honestly the most violent, scary person. But then a switch would flip and he's Prince Charming again. He's buying me roses. He's getting my nails done. He's getting me pedicures to take me out on fancy dates. And I was so confused for 3 years. It was like about once a month that we would go for a couple weeks where it was like beautiful. Like we had the perfect relationship. And then 1 week he would just snap. And then I would get set off because of my own mental health issues. And there would be times where he'd hit me and I'd hit him back. And then he'd go, "See, you're psychotic. Look at what you did to me," because I'd give him a black eye or something. And then I started feeling like I was the problem. Because like, oh crap, I did just do that to him. Maybe I am the issue. Maybe it's because I'm crazy and I'm setting him off. It was quite the ride. It really was. He ended up cheating with a girl who has a disease. And he ended up giving it to me. So I now have to live with this. And I found out while we were separated and got all the testing done, got medication. And he basically said, "We're meant to be together. Nobody else is going to want you now anyways. So you might as well come back to me." And then of course mixed with the "I regret leaving you, I love you," all this other stuff. I just wanted you to prove to me that you could get yourself back together and all this other stuff. It was just kind of a wreck. But then even after all of that, he kind of pulled me out of that dark place for a couple months that I was in. So I was in this like delusion that he was like kind of like my savior again, because he pulled me out of that dark place when we first got together.
What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light, MB. Welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. If you're new to this station, we got 3 goals: to educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who has never been in an abusive relationship, doesn't understand abusive relationships, or perhaps you have or are in an abusive relationship and you don't even know it. We are here to empower all of our survivors to stand up and share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment, because you are powerful, you are strong, and your voice deserves to be heard. And for anyone who is currently suffering in silence, we are here to encourage you. Listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. Your feelings are valid. And despite how it may look and feel in this very moment, there's always a way out as long as you seek support. Now, come on and hop up in this thing, because it's time for us to rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way. So we about to light it up. Y'all, welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast. You know how I always start these off. Make sure you are buckled up. Keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times because it just might be a bumpy ride. Today, we have the amazing, the strong, the courageous, the beautiful, the magnificent Miss Rebekah in the building. Pew, 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 pew. Confetti, 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 confetti. Rebekah, sis, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you today?
Girl, as I always tell my people, it's a great day to be alive. So as long as we're still above ground, the truth is it's a great day to be alive. But we're going to go ahead and dive right in this thingity thing. A lot of people don't know that abuse doesn't necessarily just affect people who have experienced abuse in the past. People don't always get into abusive, traumatic relationships because of their past exhibited abuse. Me personally, I didn't have any experience with abuse, but still ended up in an abusive relationship because I knew that I was making decisions, or I see now that I was making decisions from insecurities. And when I let my insecurities lead me, we just went all kinds of wrong. But what was it like for you? How did you end up getting into an abusive relationship? And did you have any kind of experience with abuse before that even happened?
So I ended up in that specific relationship because I met him through another person, and it was a really rough time in my life. I had experienced abuse in the past, but it wasn't like in a relationship type sense. It was more family. But me and that family member has since reconciled, so I wouldn't really want to go over that too much. Um, but yeah, I have experienced abuse in the past. I had a really traumatic childhood, and I had already had a child with another man who I wouldn't say is abusive, but he wasn't very nice either. Definitely like a player, slept around. But I was still recovering from all of that and then my own issues. And I ended up meeting this guy through my child's father's then girlfriend. Yeah, she,
Wait a minute. So you were in a relationship with this guy. Y'all had a baby. He ends up getting a girlfriend,
mhm.
and you meet homeboy through his girlfriend.
Yeah, it was a really interesting situation. For a while, when my son was little, like by this time, my son was about 2. I stayed with my father, and at the time, me and him were still a little rocky, and we weren't getting along at that time. And well, I had to move out of the house. And so my baby dad was like, well, I'll let you live with me because you have my son until you find a place. And so I stayed with him for a couple weeks. During this time, his girlfriend and I were getting along. She liked to smoke, and I smoked with her a lot. And we would sit there and watch TV and joke. And she confided in me one day that my baby dad was cheating on her. And I was like, girl, with who?
And
She
within
showed
3 weeks, wait a minute, y'all developed a bond that close within 3 weeks of you. That's bananas.
we got along really well. We liked a lot of the same stuff. She was just really bubbly and outgoing and had this like really good energy about her. And I felt like I could connect with her, and she connected with me really well. It kind of annoyed him how much we got along. But yeah, so she showed me a picture of this girl, and I was like, that's the same one of the same girls she did on you with. And long story short, she ended up basically while my baby dad was out of town, like hooking up with this one guy, and she wanted me to come with her to the bar. So it looked like we were having a girls' night. And I ended up meeting this guy, but he liked me when he met us.
Wait, wait,
So
wait, wait. Nope, nope, nope. Rebekah, you going too fast.
I'm so-
Wait a second. Okay. So the girlfriend is upset that the guy you used to date was cheating on her. So when he's out of town, she's like, yo, I got somebody I want to meet anyways. Instead of breaking off the relationship, she's like, I want to just go have me some fun. And y'all go to a bar to meet the guy that she
and
wants to hook up with.
yeah, and then she was gonna leave the bar with him. I was just gonna stay there and hang out with her phone so it looked like she was there. And
So the father of your child had her location on track.
yeah,
Did he have your location when y'all were dating?
no, but oh, when we were dating,
Yeah.
no, not generally.
Huh.
Of course, I didn't really go anywhere at the time. I didn't drive, so I just kind of stayed home. When I had our son, it was pretty early in our relationship, and we both had medical issues because of the pregnancy and everything.
Oh,
So he didn't really have to keep tabs on me too much. I was kind of home all the time.
was the location service on her phone his idea, or was it her idea and they just kind of agreed to do it?
It was mostly his idea from what I remember because he's a firefighter and he wants to make sure that like everybody's safe.
Yeah, can I
And
pause for a second? I just want to pause really quick. How long have they been dating?
they were dating for like a year at that point.
I can understand how people can say they want to do something like that, like just send me your location, keep your location services on because I want to make sure that you're safe. But when someone is out there in the streets, it's hard for me to believe, and I'm not saying that it's not true, but it's hard for me to believe that their intention behind having someone else's location is strictly out of, I want to make sure you're safe, and more so out of, I know if I'm doing this dirt, then he or she must be doing some dirt, and I need to keep tabs on them. And that's just from an experience. I hadn't had the experience of somebody keeping tabs on me from that standpoint. But I have had an experience of when someone was doing dirt, they were questioning me if I was doing dirt when I wasn't, nor did I give off the impression that I was. And a lot of times, I just want the listeners to know that that can be a sign. Like, don't take that lightly, especially if you already know they're doing something. But if you suspect that they're doing something and then all of a sudden they're doing things to make you feel like you should be guilty about something that you haven't done, you might as well not even continue in that relationship because it's just not going to be healthy.
Yeah, and I had a lot of experience with that with my ex-husband. Um, but yeah, it the that's just based on what he said at the time. From what I like, what she told me, he said it was more of like because I think it was the app Pulse Point, and it can track if you got in an accident or something. But that
Mm-hmm.
was his excuse at the time.
It always sounds good, right, Rebekah?
Oh yeah, always sounds good.
So y'all meet up at the bar, and the plan was you go do what you do. I ain't gonna say nothing. Mom's the word. Just keep your phone here in case there's any questions.
Yeah,
But it didn't go
yeah.
down like that.
No, it went a totally different direction.
Please fill
So
us.
this guy shows up, and me and her just sitting at the bar drinking a couple beers, and all of a sudden there's arms around both of us. Hey ladies, what's up? Kind of long story short, he's flirting with both of us, and she's like, he's trying to get us both to come back. And she's like, oh no, she's gay. Bitch, tell him you're gay. And he was like, oh, let's see how gay she really is.
Y'all are bananas. Y'all are wild thornberries.
I was very, very wild at the time. So I was kind of like, you know what? It's kind of like another screw you to my baby dad if I join in with his girl. And so I did go along with bad drunk decision making, but Yeah, so after that, he ghosted her and started blowing me up every day.
Okay.
When are we gonna go on a date? I like you. You're gonna be mine. I knew from the first time I saw you that you're gonna be my wife one day. Gassing me up.
Oh, he was coming out the gates with it.
Yes.
Hang on, but when y'all met him at the bar, was her intention? It wasn't to really having a relationship with him, was it? It was just like, let me just do this quick hookup to
She
get back.
made it was kind of confusing because like afterwards she was like, I think I like him more than just a hookup. But when they were first doing it, it was kind of just to hook up, you know? But then like afterwards she was like, I think I kind of like him. I want him to date me. So it was
But she's still in the right. She's still in the relationship with old dude.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like one of those situations where until you break it off with him, you can't really have him anyways. But I still was friends with her. So for like literally 3 months, I flat out told him no. And then I started seeing another guy, which it lasted like 2 weeks. Um, because I have depression, I have mental health issues myself, and I have a very high tendency to become very much more than depressed, to the point where I'm a danger to myself. And I was having one of those moments, and the guy thought it was just me trying to manipulate him. And so he was like, we're done right on the spot. And then I got a message from,
Homeboy.
yeah. And he was like, hey, you okay? I saw you post a couple sad things on your wall. And I was like an emotional wreck at that point because not only was I already depressed, now my boyfriend just broke up with me. So I was like, no, I want to die, you know, and just started venting to him. And he immediately came over with like snacks and fast food. And he like logged in his Hulu and sat there and watched a movie with me and all this, just cute stuff, trying to comfort me. And literally from that day on, we started dating. And everything was like great for like the first few months. And it was to the point where like we were hanging out almost every day. He was either coming over or he was taking me to his place. My son got really attached to him really, really quick. Um, Mind you, also by this time I did move into my own place. I was within a couple weeks I had moved into my own place. Um,
Really
yeah,
quick. Were you
yeah.
and homeboy? Are y'all around the same age?
Oh no, no. He has an 11-year age difference on me.
I don't know why something was telling me to ask that question. Something just okay, okay.
So at the
Something
time I was 21, almost 22, and he was 31, 32.
see, something felt fishy. Okay. All right. So he really, oh man, he's taking good advantage of the immaturity at the mental state, the everything right now, the vulnerability, the immaturity. Because I mean, 21, we think we're grown, but we are nowhere near it. We haven't experienced squat diddly.
Honestly, I still need my parent. I am not grown. I'm 26. I'm not grown.
Girl, listen. And that is how we all feel. Because we could be on our parents' insurance to like 26, 27 anyways. So trust me, I understand. I knew something felt off with this. I mean, not that we don't already know something's gonna be off with it, but something just felt a little extra off. Okay. He's had a decade of experience on you.
Yeah, yeah. So during this time, some of the red flags I saw were he doesn't see any of his kids, and he had four of them with three different baby moms. Um, He had a couple abuse accusations, but of course they were all crazy. And, they were just making stuff up. And his parents validated his story. So I'm like, okay. They were like, oh, yeah, they were all just nuts. My baby boy would never be like that. Uh, so, yeah. And everything seemed to be going great. And then I ended up losing the transmission in my car one day. So I started like staying with him for like a couple weeks so I could take him to work and use his car to get down to work. And he had just started a new job. He needed to wake up at like 2, 3 a.m. He was going crabbing for a job. And I was trying to make sure that he remembered to set his alarm. So I got on his phone to check to see if he set his alarm, and I noticed his lock wasn't the same. So I tried like a different code. And by that time, he woke up, saw that his phone was in my hand, and he grabbed me, slammed me down on the bed, and just started choking me, calling me a nosy, calling me every name he could think of, telling me I should die, um, all kinds of stuff.
Well,
And
hold on. How long had y'all been dating before that started happening?
so at this point, we started dating at the end of or not at the end of January, at the end of October, and this was January.
So 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. 3 months in.
The switch in 3 months. Now, okay, before we keep going, I gotta slow us down. So you mentioned the flags that you did see, him not spending time with his kids, him calling his exes crazy. When you saw that in that moment, did you think of them as like, did you acknowledge that they were flags, or were you like, it didn't carry much weight to you at the time?
At the time, I had like a couple bad exes, like I said, my baby dad. And then I also had an ex before that cheated on me with a guy. And like,
Girl, you've been through it.
but those were the only two exes I had. So I was like, okay, a couple crazy exes, whatever. Like I've heard of some dramatic baby moms too. I know a couple dramatic baby moms. So I was like, maybe, grain of salt. His parents say, no, that's not how it happened. You know, I kind of went with it because he was treating me nice up until that point, and he seemed like he really like engaged with my kid when he was around. He would always constantly like, oh, let's go outside and run around and just do things with him. And so like it was to the point by this time my son already started calling him daddy on
And
his
your
own.
was 2 at this time?
He was about 2.5.
Okay. And to be clear, because I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything, within that 3 months of y'all dating, there were no signs of any kind of physical intimidation or abuse.
Nope,
It was
no
really
sign.
all charming, lovey-dovey, protector, I got your back, I'm your rock type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The
And
night
then looked at his phone.
the night that you looked at his phone, had he been drinking or anything, or was he completely sober and reacted that way?
I don't think he was drinking. If anything, he might have like had 1 or 2 beers because he was working 2 jobs at the time. One of them was more like part-time, and he's friends with that boss. So he might have had like 1 or 2 beers, but nothing that I knew of at that point. I do know that before we went to bed, we had smoked a blunt, but that generally did nothing to him. He did in the future after this have an issue with drinking and getting violent.
Okay. And I'm not saying that for anybody
Don't know.
I'm not saying that that's an excuse for anything. I'm literally just being inquisitive because some people will say, oh, well, he was drunk. So it's no big, like, this isn't who he really is. And I just wanted to see if there was anything that could have, huh?
I did end up making that excuse for him at some point. So that definitely was a valid thing. I just don't know about that specific day.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. So he just like light switch, quick, pins you down, puts his hand on your throat. Where's your son during this time?
I think at this time he was with his father. He still had visitation with his dad.
Okay, so it was just you and him in the apartment.
Yeah. Actually it was at his parents' house. So his parents lived in this trailer that's kind of like on the outskirts of the town they were in. And it was a 3 bedroom. His mom slept in 1 bedroom at the back of the trailer. His dad slept with the disabled little sister and shared a room with her. And we slept in the room next to them. So we were actually at his parents' house and they could hear everything. The walls were thin.
Okay, so okay, so we're in the moment now. He gets on top of you, he's strangling you, he's yelling at you. Are you responding? Like, are you trying to scream? Are you trying to call for help?
At that time, I was just trying to focus on prying his hands off of me because I couldn't breathe. But it as quick as it happened, it was over just as quick too. He like out of nowhere, right before like I started going black, immediately took his hands off, and he went, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and just started apologizing out of nowhere. And I was like, "What the hell happened?" And he tried to be like, "Oh, I was just having a flashback of, stuff that happened with my exes and da 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 da, and you scared me. And when people first wake up, they're technically insane. So, it's just all kinds of stuff. Excuse after excuse and apologies. Oh, this will never happen again, I swear."
So he
It
was
happened to
straight
be
up Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in that moment.
that was pretty consistent throughout the relationship, honestly. It was very, very black and white. He was either Prince Charming or he was out to murder me. And that's not even exaggerating. Um, Throughout our relationship, there was several instances like that, whether it's I looked at the time on his phone and he thought I was being nosy, or I said I was going to Walmart, but my GPS said I was at the Waffle House, so I must have been on a date. And I had receipts to prove I was at Walmart grabbing groceries with the groceries in hand, you know. Uh, and there was also several instances of him cheating, which I discovered was why he was reacting like that with the phone. Um, and then there was also several times where, oh, if you are that sad that you want to die, I'll kill you myself. And he would try to strangle me. There's been one time where I was in such bad stress and psychosis that I actually tried to hang myself in the backyard. And he came out, laughed, called me stupid, and just pulled the rope tighter for a couple seconds just to mock me. He was honestly the most violent, scary person. But then a switch would flip and he's Prince Charming again. He's buying me roses. He's getting my nails done. He's getting me pedicures. He's taking me out on fancy dates. And I was so confused for 3 years. Uh, just the whole relationship was like that. It was almost like a monthly cycle with him. I used to like sit there and joke, like, "What, are you on your period again?" And it was like about once a month that we would go for a couple of weeks where it was like beautiful. Like we had the perfect relationship. And then one week he would just snap. And then I would get set off because of my own mental health issues. And there would be times where he'd hit me and I'd hit him back. And then he'd go, "See, you're psychotic. Look at what you did to me," because I'd give him a black eye or something. And then I started feeling like I was the problem because, like, oh crap, I did just do that to him. Maybe I am the issue. Maybe it's because I'm crazy and I'm setting him off. It was quite quite the ride. It really was.
So the moment after the very first incident where because we got to digest, we have to unpack and digest all of this. The very
Yeah.
first incident, when you could breathe again, he's apologizing profusely. Was there anything in you that said, girl, you need to get up, leave? This is not for you. Just get out.
As I said, I have my own mental health issues, and I freaked out like that and went, "Oh crap, I really feel guilty about that." So at that time, knowing how I was, because I would get violent with my own parents, um, I figured he was, making excuses about mental health, trauma, all this other stuff. And I was like, maybe we can get you a hold of a therapist and we'll work through this. That's about where I was at the time. Give him a chance to prove that it's just something neurologically wrong and he wanted to work on it. Um, but other than that, like, I don't think I was even contemplating leaving at that point.
And do you think you weren't, because I want to make sure I understand your response. Do you think you weren't contemplating leaving because of what you put your parents through? And you were like, if someone would just been there to help me, I want to be here to help him. I don't want to abandon him.
Pretty much, pretty much. That
Okay.
was the kind of thing. I didn't want to leave him in a time of weakness when, especially I just got left in a time of weakness. I was struggling with my own mental health and my boyfriend broke up with me. So it was like, okay, we can work through this together. Let's try to find a therapist or something, you know?
Man, let me tell y'all, guilt is a heavy decision maker that leads us to make terrible decisions. And you're feeling guilty. You're carrying the trauma and the guilt from your past and the regret from your past about how your mental state and your actions when you were younger may have impacted or did impact your parents, and how bad your parents could have felt when they didn't have any way to figure out how to help you. And because you have that guilt, you're now making the decision to say, and plus the guilt and the regret that you have, like you said, from just leaving that other relationship. I don't want to do something to someone that I hated being done to me. And we're not able to disassociate those things and realize that even though something happened to us looking out for ourselves in the best interest of our own health and safety should be more important than us carrying that with us and saying, well, I don't want to be the person that does the same thing to you. Because we miss the fact that the reason these people are behaving this way is because they have unhealed trauma that they haven't resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever express, hey, yes, Rebekah, I know that I'm doing something wrong and I do actually want help? Or was that something that you were carrying with you and you like, I think that he wants help, but we never really had a real conversation about it?
He's expressed it like, I'll go see a therapist, I'll go get help, but that's about where it ended with him. After that, it's, oh, therapy doesn't actually help. It's a scam, whatever. But then again, he would mess up and then, oh, I'll go get help, or he'll try to make some type of deal. I think the worst way he tried to like make up with me was, okay, because I punched you, basically, I beat you up, I sent you to the hospital. You get 24 hours to hit me as much as you want. He tried to make that deal with me. And if I
What are
do that,
y'all, two grade school boys? Like, what? That sounds like two seventh grade boys who are quote unquote best friends, and they do something stupid and they're like, no, just punch me back. Please don't go tell your mom. Just hit me back.
yeah, no, that was a 35-year-old man. That was
That's bananas. But what we're not going to do is just zoom past the fact that you just said he sent you to the hospital. So it wasn't just the abuse wasn't just strangulation and verbal abuse and hitting. What did he do that sent you to the hospital, and what was that a response to that he felt he had the justification to do it?
the so the first time, because there was multiple occasions I had to go get my head scanned. Um, yeah, I stuck it out way too long, but you know, getting to the point. The first time was because we had separated, um, because I had lost my job, and that meant I was losing my house, my new car, and he decided to sneak and wipe my bank account and leave me. Um, we
As
had
a result of you losing your job and your car, that was what he was like, oh well, you're useless now, so I'm just going to take your money? Or was that just a
Well,
coincidence?
he said I was a failure and that I didn't try hard enough and that I don't have enough ambition or drive, and he needs somebody that's gonna be his, Bonnie to, his Clyde, and we're gonna be that, power couple making money, and you don't have what it takes type of thing.
So his solution to becoming a power couple was to wipe you clean of everything that you did have.
Yeah. It sent me into a pretty bad spiral because admittedly, part of the reason I actually ended up staying and getting back was one right before then when he had cheated with the choking incident. He ended up cheating with a girl who has a disease, and he ended up giving it to me. So I now have to live with this. And I found out while we were separated and got all the testing done, got medication. And he basically said, we're meant to be together. Nobody else is going to want you now, anyways. So you might as well come back to me. Um, and then of course mixed with the I regret leaving you, I love you, all this other stuff. I just wanted you to prove to me that you could get yourself back together and all this other stuff. It was just kind of a wreck. But then even after all of that, he kind of pulled me out of that dark place for a couple months that I was in. So I was in this like delusion that he was like kind of like my savior again, because he pulled me out of that dark place when we first got together. And I was to the point where like I was about to lose my kid because I had told somebody I was feeling so upset that they basically twisted and said I was not only a danger to myself, but I was my child too. And I was like, no, I was just trying to vent. I was sad. like, but so I was risking losing him over mental health issues. And I was losing my house, my car, my boyfriend just left me, wiped my bank account. And then he comes back and he pulls me back out of this dark place and helps me fix this stuff. And then like breaks down my self-esteem at the same time and tells me he's basically my only option at this point, and I went with it.
Before we
Literally,
before we go on, I want people to understand that these types of human beings who are abusive, manipulative, controlling, narcissistic, they do that. It's not just a cycle. We've talked about this before with it being a cycle because people want to know, why in the world do you stay? A lot of time people stay in abusive relationships not because they're necessarily dependent on the other person. It's different for different situations, but because it's not all bad. Just like Rebekah just said a little while ago, it was like they went through 3 weeks of good and then the 1 week of bad, and it leaves you so confused, and you're holding on to the hope that one day the Dr. Jekyll will, you know, overpower the Mr. Hyde, and Mr. Hyde will never come out. Mr. Hyde will be healed. So there's this weird I don't know if you want to call it a savior complex, but I'm convinced that they know what they're doing. They know that they're breaking you down, and they know that they can pull you out because they're playing mind games the whole time. And all they have to do is see that you get hooked to the mind game one time, and they got you. They got
Mm. And at that point, I felt like I needed him just to keep myself together, and that he was my savior. And I thought I was madly in love with him. Around that time, around the time I actually got married, which was only within a couple months of that. We weren't together, but almost a year when we got married. Around that time, I had lost my best friend. She was like of 11 years, I think, at that point. We were friends in sixth grade and middle school. And she was even so fed up. She was like, "You're delusional. You're insane. Like, this man doesn't love you. Get away." And I was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. He saved me. He saved me." And she got so mad at me. I still can't get her to talk to me, and it's been a few years since I've separated him.
wow. Let,
Yeah.
let me tap dance on that point for a minute. Because when I post a lot of things, I'll see comments about people saying, you know, a real friend would stick around, a real friend would stay, a real friend would make sure that you get out. But I want to be transparent. I have friends, and in my situation, they distanced themselves. I'm blessed that they didn't completely abandon me, so that they're still there now. And but they distance themselves because watching someone you love subject themselves to something like that over and over and over again, we don't realize, the person who's being abused, we don't realize how much pain is causing them. And it would be, it's easy to see this now on the outside of it, but it's selfish of us to think that they should stick around for us when our decisions are emotionally, mentally, maybe even spiritually causing them pain. And that's what happens in these situations. So for anyone who's out there who's never had a friend or a sister or a sibling or anybody or brother who's gone through an abusive relationship, it's hard. It's easy for you to say, I'm a real friend. I would be there. I would never leave. But you don't know, we don't know either, the amount of damage and the impact that is having on the people who love us, who really know what's going on. And I hope that I hope she's able to come back around. I hope that because y'all have such history together, that eventually she will see that you are firm in your decision. You are firm in looking out for your own mental and physical health. And she'll be like, I'm glad you made it out, sis. I had to separate for my own safety, but let's do the rest of the life together. I really pray and hope that that happens for you, sis. I do.
I hope one day I get to talk to her again. Knowing her, it's probably not probable. But um, back on what we were talking about. So the first time he put me in the hospital was because of that girl he was cheating on me with. He ended up dating her while we separated. And I had gotten a job with him at the pizza place he was working at. And I was
While y'all
delivery driver.
separated,
Huh?
while y'all were separated.
No, once we got back together.
Okay.
Um, I got a job with him as like a part-time thing along with my regular job that I had. And I discovered that that girl would start working with us. And I happened to pull her number off his phone when he wasn't looking. And I sent her a message, haha, I guess I'll see you on Saturday, winky face, just to be a smart ass. And yeah, toxic behavior. Shouldn't have done that. Should have left it alone. 100%. Um, but I did, and he got so pissed off about it, because she messaged him complaining, why is she, talking to me like that? That he actually drove us back home because at the time we were at his boss's house having a couple drinks, and we were doing like tequila shots. And we drove back to his parents' house arguing the whole way. And I was like, okay, well, give me my keys because we were driving my car. He had the keys, he was driving. And he was like, oh, these keys? And he threw them. So when I went to go walk around the car to go grab my keys, he got me down on the driveway on my back and just started punching me repeatedly in my right temple over and over and over again, screaming, to the point where my screams were heard by his mother inside. And she came out and said, boy, I raised you better than that. I put you in this world and I can take you the F out. And then he turned around and swung on his mother and told her to get back in the effing house now or you'll be next. After that, she basically tried to talk him down and got me to go in the house with her. Once we got into her room, she pleaded with me not to call the cops. He only gets like this when he's drinking, so let's just try to talk to him about his drinking. I'll make sure he's not allowed to bring alcohol at the house. Just don't make a police report. So I waited till she was asleep.
Wait a second. Because that right there is admitting that she knew what happened to his exes. I picked up on it. I knew you knew what was going on, but I had to pause that just in case somebody was listening. They tuned out and they tuned back in, because she told you that everybody was crazy and that stuff wasn't happening. And now she's pleading with you after he comes at her.
Yeah.
It says, please don't call the police on my son. Let's just make sure, as if keeping alcohol out of the house keeps alcohol out of his hands.
Yeah. Which really wasn't the case anyways, because his dad was a drunk who drank a 30-pack and a pint of vodka every night. He was going through intense chemo, and the pain was so bad he had to drink it away, is what he said. He's a terminal patient for leukemia, but he's had it for 20 years and is still kicking. So he's been suffering for a while. But point being, there was going to be alcohol in the house anyways, because that man was not going to stop drinking.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you wait till she goes to sleep.
And despite me being so dizzy, it was like I was drunk. I drove myself swerving everywhere. Couldn't hardly find the hospital that I should have known where it was, like the back of my hand. It took me like a half an hour driving around trying to find the emergency room. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over because I know I was swerving. And they did a head scan and they were like, you have a concussion? Do you want to make a police report? And I was like, is there anything going on that needs medical intervention? And they said, no, just ice your head, take some Tylenol, get some rest. And I was like, then I need to go. I have work in an hour.
And they let you leave?
Yep.
With a full concussion?
Yep. Drove myself to work. I had no sleep that night, had a full-blown concussion, went to work my shift as an assistant manager at Shorestop at 6 a.m.
With bruises on your face, I imagine. So he didn't break skin, you weren't bleeding, but you had...
I had a nice big bruise around this eye. It was to the point where I walked in and my manager gasped and asked me who jumped me. And she was like all over me, trying to, do you need anything? Do you need to go home? You shouldn't be working right now. Get some rest. And I was like, I'm safer here than I am back at home right now. Just let me work.
So you told her without telling her that homeboy was the responsible party.
No, I straight told her. I told her it was my at the time fiance. We weren't quite married yet. But I straight told her. I was like, my fiance did this to me, and she knew what he looked like because he was a regular in that store. And she was like, he's not allowed in here. And he tried to pull up at one point thinking maybe she's at work because I disappeared from the house and he had no idea where I was. He pulled up to the store, started banging on the door, let me talk to my girlfriend, let me talk to my woman. Um, she locked the door. She wouldn't let him in the whole shift. And then after that, I had to work my shift with him as soon as I left there. So I had to deal with him anyways. But surprisingly, it wasn't that bad. Well, from him at least. That girl actually did end up showing up to work that day and tried to fight me, and he got between us and proposed his love for me in front of her. So again, black and white.
While you have a fresh concussion and a black face, not a black eye, because I imagine that was,
It was about from here all the way around on my cheekbone was the bruising. Yeah.
that he did. He's telling the other girl, no, back up off her. I love her. I'm choosing her over you.
Yeah, basically.
Did anybody at the pizza job ask you about what happened?
He told me if I told anybody that he would hit me again. So no. I didn't even tell him I went to the hospital. He had no idea until months later. I just told him I took a drive.
I still can't get over the fact. Like, I don't know. I would need to talk to a person who works in the hospital and a nurse. I would think that it would be protocol for them. I guess if you're a certain age, you can check yourself out, but I would think that it would be protocol for them to not allow you to leave, let alone drive yourself immediately after diagnosing you with a concussion.
They said it was mild enough. I didn't need any hospitalization. I just needed rest. And they did suggest somebody else drive me, but I was very adamant that I was driving myself because the only person else who could have drove me would have been him. And that wouldn't have been great. So they just kind of let me leave.
Were you during that moment while you were at the hospital, were you secretly hoping to be admitted or secretly hoping that one of the staff members would just call the police?
Yeah, because I didn't want to, be in trouble for telling the police. It was also the only place I had to live at that point, and I needed a roof over my son's head. And I figured even if they did arrest him and I was physically safe, his parents would have kicked me out on the street with my son. So it was kind of like, I want to be here to be safe, get my head checked out, let things calm down, and then just go to work. I kind of did hope that I'd have to be admitted for a couple of days just so I could get a couple of days away, but if they weren't going to do that, then, no point in me staying. I didn't want to file a police report.
And on
I
this
should.
particular night, was your son with them or was your son with his dad?
He was with his dad.
Okay.
Luckily, most of the times he freaked out wasn't around my kid. Um, However, my kid did witness a couple of times, and he is permanently traumatized from that. He still brings him up. He calls him Bad, his first name, and constantly talks about, remember when he did this to you, mommy? That was so scary. I just want to beat him up. When I'm older, can I go beat him up? And like, I'm laughing because like it's cute because he wants to protect his mom, and but like it's a really sad situation, and I feel so bad. But luckily, most of it was kept out of eyesight for the longest time. He would only generally flip out when my son was with his dad for a weekend. He didn't really do anything around him. Um, that more started towards like the end of our relationship, where he started getting confident enough to interfere my son with the stuff.
And when you say interfere your son, what does that mean?
So, like, so me being on the spectrum myself, I get overstimulated. My son's also on the spectrum, and he's very, very much ADHD, very hyper, would like to climb all over me. He also has a hard time listening to direction. When you tell him to do something, generally he does the opposite. And it's not for a lack of trying, timeouts, all the different tools I could possibly think of. He's just, that's how his brain works. And I would still get frustrated. I would get overstimulated. I'd get exhausted. And like, for example, he would be climbing on me and I'd be like, son, can you please get off of me? I just can't right now. Watch your shows, play with your toys. And it wouldn't even be time for him to correct himself and get off of me. He would start running in the room. He'd grab him up, tell him to go on his tippy toes in the corner, hands behind his back, forehead on the wall. And I would protest to that because I think that's a little extreme, because he would especially do it for like 10 minutes straight. And if he dropped his heels, he'd make him raise his heels again and time start over.
And how old is your son at this moment?
3.
Let me tell you something. That's
And
the fact that they can even, because when my baby was 2, his dad locked me out of the room, and I forgot what he did. He might have, I don't know what he did, something to his sisters, but he's 2. He doesn't understand. You're at the phase where you're having to learn and teach. And he locked me out of the room, and he made him do like push-ups and squats at 2 for punishment.
and honestly, that's a little extreme, especially for a 2-year-old. They don't even have like
They don't
the
comprehend
muscle
right and wrong.
to do those types of things. They also don't like you just said, right and wrong. They're just learning right and wrong. And they're, you know, the whole point of that toddler stage is to learn the boundaries. They push them on purpose to see if where they are and if you stick with them. It's how they learn their social skills and what is okay and what's not. And to punish that harshly kind of sets them up for failure, in my opinion. Because, and it's just overly harsh. It's one thing if you're actually like in the military or you're a grown person to have some sort of physical punishment like that. 2, 3-year-old, no. At that point, it was no bad or time out in the chair, you know. And he would do this, and my son would be sitting there screaming and crying because his legs are tired. And I'd try to be like, it's okay, get out. And I would try to be like, no, we can't do this. That's not okay. And he would go, oh, so I'm not allowed to punish him. I guess that means I don't have to feed him either. That means I don't have to buy his clothes. In fact, I don't have to house him. Maybe you guys can get out. And I would have to choose between my son eating, him having clothes, him having a roof over his head, and standing up for that type of stuff. I couldn't go to my baby dad at the time because me and him are always very rocky. One minute we're doing okay, we're co-parenting. The next minute he wants to drag me to court because I told his girlfriend he flirted with me again or something. I don't know. Something stupid. Or I didn't give him gas money to come pick up his own child. And, so it's like, I didn't want to be like, okay, this is going on at the house. I need your support. Help me. Because, and he proved it to be true. He would go straight to the court, say whatever he wanted to say, and try to get him away from me again. Which, I mean, granted, at the time, looking back now, especially in the mindset I'm in now, honestly would have been the best thing for him at that point. But me with my issues and just my childhood problems, I grew up in a broken home and I grew up without my mom. And seeing him potentially get ripped away from me, um, despite everything that was happening, was just too painful of a thought at that point in time. I needed my baby here, so I knew he was safe. I knew he was getting taken care of. But at the same time, I was putting him in danger. So,
And you and your dad's relationship was still strained?
mostly because me and him weren't strained at that point in time. I think around that time, my dad had apologized for things he did. I apologized for things I did growing up. And we both kind of hashed it out by that time. But me and my grandmother, who we lived with, she's who I would also refer to as a parent. If I ever say parents, she's also who I'm referring to. Um, she and I were still rocky because she couldn't look past 14, 15-year-old me and see 20 something year old me. So she just assumed everything was how it was prior. She didn't see any sort of improvement or development with my mental health. Even though there wasn't a lot, there was still some. I was trying a lot harder than I used to, but point being, it was rocky. So like going back with her or getting help from him was also made difficult by her. He would tell me, I would love to just help you move out while he's at work and bring you back home and say you can live with me, but it's her house. And she says, no, you're going to have to figure this out on your own.
So your dad was still living with your grandma?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a disabled veteran. He can't really afford a place on his own. And especially when he was raising me and take care of me. So he kind of leaned on them for housing when I was growing up after his divorce.
And so now you're at a place where you're engaged to homeboy, this dude who doesn't even spend time with his own children, but has the audacity to use your child as a pawn of what you're to force you to make decisions.
Yeah. There was honestly a lot of stuff that happened. So like after that big fight, we didn't have a lot going on in the way of conflict until after we were married. And
And
then I would say like it was every couple weeks to like once a month we would have an episode of a fight, and it was normally over something stupid. It was his phone, my GPS said I was somewhere where I wasn't, or whatever, just something stupid, something for him to freak out about. It could have been like he saw me laughing with one of my coworkers at work and automatically I'm screwing my coworker and he's got to flip out on me and be aggressive. Um, but there was just so many of these episodes. I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you all of them. But this basically went on for years. I left him like 3 different times, moved with my mom. One of the times I had to walk 10 miles carrying my son just to go get my car to be able to leave because he told me I wasn't allowed to have my own car back.
wait a second. Okay. So y'all are still y'all are married at this time.
Yeah.
You have your son and he has your car, or what? Like,
He
put us in the setting for this.
so like at this point in time, I wasn't allowed to work. He had a lifted Jeep that was more of like a project car, but he would use for his daily errands and driving to work. It was broke down at that point, so he would use my car.
When you
And
say when you say you weren't allowed to work,
meaning he basically told me that he wanted me to stay home and help his parents with his little sister and help them around the house because they needed the help. And he had
you,
already sabotaged a few of my jobs just by like not letting me have my keys and telling me I'm not going to work that day, just random stuff like that. So he basically made it impossible for me to hold a job at that point. So yeah, so he went to work with my car and we had an argument. I forget about what, 'cause like I said, a lot of these were like really stupid like arguments. Like, why did it even have to go there?
as they
And
usually are.
yeah, and he was like, "You need to get out of my house." I was like, "You have to evict me. I've been living here. You can't just throw me out because of whatever it was." And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, then you need to bring me my car. You have my car." And he was like, "Ha, you ain't getting the car back. We're married, so this is technically my property now, too. You can take your son and walk all the way to Maryland, and go stay with your mom." And so, thinking he was just gonna come home and like possibly harm me if I was still there, I decided to hit up his boss and told him I was coming to the restaurant and I was getting my keys. And I took my son and I carried him because we lived, like I said, on the outskirts. The nearest store was like an hour and a half walk, and it was like a little country mom and pop gas station. It was about a 10-mile walk to his work. Walked for 4 hours straight, getting to his job, carrying my toddler in the cold. And by the time I got there, he was like, "What are you, crazy? Hunters out here, just come on, let's get him inside." Ripped him out of my arms, handed him to one of the waitresses, and started yelling at me. "Why would you do this? I figured if I told you that, you would just straighten up your act and I would just work it out with you when I got home. Why are you here? You walked, just you're being irrational." And I was like, "No, you told me you want me gone. I want my keys. Give me my keys." And it turned into this whole blow up fight because he refused to give me my keys. And he ended up trying to swing on me, and his boss literally jumped on top of him and grabbed my keys out of his pocket, and then while still holding him down, slipped a 20 out of his pocket and said, "Here's gas money, here's your keys, now go." I got him. And he's kicking and screaming on the ground, "Get off me, get off me." And I get my son in the car and I hit the gas station real quick, packed up as much stuff as I could, and then left and went to my mom's house. And then 3 days later, "Baby, I love you. Please, let's work this out. I'm sorry, it was a stupid argument. It won't happen again." And I went back,
Why?
and I honestly couldn't answer that question. I just, the best thing I could say is trauma bond. I still felt like I was so attached and so in love with him. And I felt like at the same time, like I needed him, just because like I was so unstable, especially mentally. I was constantly couldn't even like cope with my own thoughts half the time, let alone the things that are going on around me. So he kind of, I don't know. Like I said, I still had that like savior complex with him. He saved me. I love him. We can work this out. I can help him. I just wasn't ready to let go at that point.
What was your mom's response when you and your son arrived?
Um, why are you guys here? Okay, sleep on the couch. Do you need a Percocet? Um, because I was complaining about leg pain. And other than that, my mom really wasn't a mom. She was a drug addict, and I just kind of, tried to have a relationship with her as I got older. And right now we're not talking, but she's very dismissive. She's like, "Okay, you can stay here. You want to smoke some weed? I have some perks if you need one, if you're in pain. Other than that, sleep on the couch, leave me alone, don't mess up my house." It was just kind of like, I don't care that you're here, but don't bug me. You know? And
How did that make you feel? Like you just experienced, besides all the trauma that you've been through, you just walked for 4 hours straight carrying a 3, 4 year old, and
yeah,
then you witnessed, like you're in the midst of an altercation where your husband tries to attack you in public in front of other people. You get your keys, you drive how far?
it's about so we were in Smyrna, Delaware, and drove all the way to Cecil County, Maryland. So that's like a 45-minute drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
That
drive your mom lets you in, just don't touch anything. You don't have a good relationship with her anyways. I'm sure you don't want your son to be around drugs. How does it
yeah.
feel when your mom's like, I don't care that you're here, that's fine, stay here, just stay out of my way and don't mess anything up?
It's kind of like what I expect from her, especially at this point. But even back then, it was just kind of like, that's my mom. She's all about, getting high and just staying in her room. And oh my God, somebody moved something. You got to tiptoe around her. So I basically would only stay there if I had like an emergency like that. And I didn't really pay her much mind. We would get into arguments here and there, but it's not something like that was shocking to me, the lack of empathy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's just always been like that. She never really was around when I was a kid either. So
So outside of the trauma bond, if you can think outside of that, did you feel like, I mean, that's a tough decision to make anyways. Do I stay here with a drug addict or do I go back to an abuser? Because those
yeah,
are really your only two options. You don't have a job right now, and it's going to take some support from somebody to be able to watch your son so that you can at least get a job. The decision, did you ever think to reach out to a shelter or anything? Or were you aware of any shelters that could have possibly helped you and your son?
I didn't look into it, probably mostly because of my pride. I didn't want to be, in a homeless shelter. And I figured if I'm in a homeless shelter, I'm definitely getting my kid taken from me because obviously he would be the better parent to have him. And just the thought of that separation, I was anything to avoid having my son taken from me. Deal with my mother. I will go through all this. I'll figure something out. But I definitely a homeless shelter was not an option at that point in my mind.
Did
Um,
you think that there were any domestic violence abuse support groups or support places that y'all could have stayed? That wasn't necessarily a homeless shelter, but more so a facility, almost like a mini hotel or something that housed strictly women and children who had been in abusive relationships who are hiding from their abuser and wanting to get back on track.
it wasn't something I considered at that point. Definitely not. Um, However, by the time I actually left him in 2023, um, I did actually end up doing that. It was our worst fight yet, and it's kind of what, that it's 100% what ended it. I haven't seen him in person since. Um, but it was another time I had to go to the hospital, and um, so I had just separated from him. We got back together, and he was going to stay with me at my mom's, but my mom was being too much of a pain to him. So we decided to stay with his parents again, against what I wanted to do, because I didn't want to be in a spot where he had more control over me. If he did something wrong and we were living under my mom's roof, I could tell him to leave, and the other way around, he could try to keep all my stuff, throw me out, you know, he had power over there.
Hold
But
on,
against
hold on 1 second. Because we're going back and forth between your mom and his mom, and he's working multiple jobs. Why is he not able to get his own place?
his excuse was to keep an eye on his little sister. We suspected, and multiple people still suspect, that even to this day, his father abuses his little sister. I know for a fact, physically, I've seen, now she has like spastic cerebral palsy, a chromosomal 13 deletion, scoliosis, autism, and she's partially deaf and can barely speak. She mostly speaks in sign, and very little of it. So, like, she'll have a meltdown and be frustrated because they said, like, in her brain she's like a genius, but like she can't express it, is the type of disorders she has. It's like she's in almost locked in syndrome, almost kind of concept. um and she'll be trying to express herself and she'll get frustrated and she'll start hitting, and I've literally watched her dad grab her and start slamming her onto a piece of furniture, trying to get her to calm down because he was so frustrated. But we suspect there's other ways she's being abused, but um that was his excuse for why he wanted to stay there, to make sure he wasn't beating on or other types of things with his little sister, because he was so protective of her.
Okay, one more question. Was there ever a conversation that was had between you and homeboy about him being abused or experiencing anything from his parents growing up?
Yes. Um, he didn't say anything in the sexual nature, but his dad would hit him constantly. He would get punched regularly. And he said he also witnessed multiple fistfights between his mom and his dad growing up. Their situation was very, in my opinion, wrong to begin with. His mom was like 15 when she met his dad in his mid 20s and got pregnant with my ex-husband. So it was already kind of a inappropriate situation to begin with, that is just terrible currently still. And he had to witness all of that growing up, which is part of the reason why I empathized with him so much and wanted to stay, because I was like, oh, it's a trauma issue. It's not he's a bad person. It's he went through so much. This is how he learned what's normal. To him, normal is screaming, fighting, hitting, that type of thing. So I kind of gave him a break with that.
Okay. I just wanted to dive in a little bit because it wasn't adding up. It's like, okay, well, you got all these jobs and you don't want anybody else to work. You got to have money somewhere enough to do that. But okay, he's trying to protect us. he's trying to protect his little sister, and he can't move out and move her in because he can't stay there to keep her.
Yeah. However, the real reason, honestly, was he blew every single penny he had on either weed or some other drug or Jeep parts working on his vehicle. There would be weeks where we barely had food because he decided to buy 2 ounces of marijuana and $1,000 worth of parts for his Jeep and screw everything else. He was very, very financially irresponsible.
So back to the last incident. Before we get to what happened, do you remember what triggered the flip out?
With leaving him, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So what happened was I moved back with him at his parents' house, and he starts working at his friend's restaurant again. They're constantly on and off, button heads, you're fired. Oh, come back, I need you,
This is
Same.
the same guy that jumped on top of him when you left?
Yeah. Yeah, they've been best friends since they were like teenagers. So it was kind of like,
Everybody knows how homeboy acts and nobody reports it.
no, nobody cares.
This is what the huge problem is, and it's so sad because people want to point the responsibility to the victim, which, or not the victim, because people aren't victims, but people want to point the responsibility to the person who's being abused, which granted, we have to take accountability for our decisions and our actions and our return. However, it doesn't seem like enough people, if any, hold the abuser responsible for like there's no reason that you should have ever been able to even get remotely close to being involved with this dude, because he has clearly a history of doing this to other people. His mom has witnessed it, his dad has witnessed, his friends knows what he's doing, and nobody wants to hold the dude responsible.
No, every single one of them made excuses for him too. Oh, he went through a lot. Oh no, they're just exaggerating. He would never. Some of them don't see that side of him, and he talks a really good game. He really does.
But they've seen it, sis.
They
His
have seen,
friends
some of them
saw
have
it.
seen, yeah, and some of them have told me, get away while you can.
But
By then
all
it was
that,
too
like,
late.
call the police. Even if the responsibility is going to fall on you to say whether or not you're going to press charges or drop them. If I have to climb on top of a dude and hold him down because I'm watching him attack somebody, especially the person that he claims to love, I need to be calling the police. But it's like in their mind, if I call the police on you, that's one less worker I have.
Yeah.
And priorities are all out of whack.
That was definitely his boss's motivation because he was his head chef and probably the best cook he ever had. I will say that man can cook. But that might have been part of the reason I fell in love with him. But man
It's
can
not
cook some
part of the reason.
Alfredo.
It's hard to find a man that can do some good cooking.
Exactly.
It's hard to come by. So I know that was part of the reason.
Yeah, and like he was doing like scratch Italian cooking in this kitchen. So like he knew all the nice dishes, like the eggplant parmesan and how to cook lamb and a nice pasta dish, homemade Alfredo, like any Italian dish you could name, he could do it.
So
And it was delicious.
like a bootleg. This wasn't like a bootleg Chili's. This was a legit restaurant. Like they were serving dishes.
Yes, it's actually a very popular restaurant in that area of Delaware. It's got 4 stars on its rating. At least last I checked. It could have dropped. I don't know. Definitely not a 5-star restaurant, but it was decent. We had our wedding like reception there, and they have like a replica of the Trevi fountain in the middle of the restaurant, and it's really pretty. Good food, really pretty. Not the best choice of employees, but
That's bananas to me. That's bananas. Y'all, we got to get our priorities in order. We have to prioritize ourselves, our own health, our own safety, everything. But at the same time, we have to, if we witness wrong, especially if it's someone that we know, we got to start speaking up. Like, there's no reason that anybody, you should endure this, anybody before you should have endured this, anybody after you, because it's going to keep happening. You're just going to find another source, another host, and hop on that. And then they're going to stay as long as they can. And hopefully they survive enough to get out. But it shouldn't be that way when it's known. It's a little different when it's hidden. But when they're bold enough to do it in public, like the
Yeah.
people who you don't, it's like you don't really love somebody if you're going to keep letting them do this to other people. If you're not going to call them out on their mess.
He was back at that restaurant, and there was this girl, she was like 17, almost 18, that he started flirting with. Now, mind you, he's 36 at this point. And I started suspecting stuff because she would start hearting stuff. I said something about her. We had arguments. Oh, she's just a coworker. She's allowed to heart things on Facebook. That doesn't mean anything. You're just being insecure, which at face value, might be true. But with the history, obviously I have a reason to be insecure. A couple months go on. I ended up getting so frustrated that I broke my own phone because I just didn't want to deal with him getting pissed off at me if I say something about Facebook or just whatever. And I just kind of did whatever he wanted. So there was a couple weekends where he said he was going fishing with his boss. His boss openly told me that was a lie. He's not with me right now. So at least, they were honest with me for the most part. But I would knowingly, knowing that he's not actually going with his boss, because I already checked, pack his bag, fold up his clothes, put his deodorant, whatever in there, and be like, here you go, honey, have a nice weekend. Just so I didn't have to deal with him flipping out. And a couple months go by, things are going fine. And then I find out he's actually seeing this girl, Abby, and that he wants a poly relationship. At this point, she's 18. And I'm so stuck, and at least mentally stuck and everything, that I'm just like, whatever, fine, let me go meet her. They ended up getting way too flirty because he claimed that like he wasn't like seeing her, he just kind of likes her and he thinks that I would like her, we should be in a poly relationship. In the beginning of our relationship, he asked me my thoughts on it, and I told him I was monogamous, but like wanted to be at least monogamous to start because I had been in a poly relationship before, but I was like, I need to build trust with you before I know like that would work for us. And he was like, oh, I was just asking because I'm monogamous. And I was like, I'm fine with that. So like he had the full opportunity to eventually be poly with me, but decided to cheat constantly. So, but we did have that conversation. It was on the table, but I told him trust was a factor that needed to be built. At that being said, I went to meet her. She got a little too flirty with him at some point, and I freaked out. I couldn't just hold back the insecurity at that point. And I said, she needs to go. I don't want her around. Obviously, y'all two have been sleeping with each other already, to which they admitted. And she actually admitted to me later that they had been sleeping together since she was 17. And but that they really fell in love with each other and they wanted to make this work. And I said, no, it's not happening. I can't do this. I physically can't take it. Um, and she got so upset that she claimed she was going to go kill herself because I wouldn't let her in our relationship. To which he basically had her leave and came back inside, and he decided that my punishment for making her cry was to be forcefully sexually assaulted, and he banged my head against the windowsill right by our bed, repeatedly, to the point where this whole section of my forehead bubbled up and both my eyes instantly went black, easily as dark as this hoodie, and then just left me, threw a towel on me, told me to clean myself up and stop crying. I deserved it, and left the room. So I grabbed a old cell phone that had no service on it. I got a hold of the Wi-Fi while he was out in the living room talking to his parents about what just happened because they heard screaming, but didn't want to bother. And I got a hold of one of my friends and said, call 911. Not call 911 now. I'm scared. And he asked me what happened. And I said, just call them. Like, I don't want to get into it, but I'm hurt really bad. About 20 minutes later, before that, so he comes back in and he basically tells me I'm to leave. I'm not allowed to bring anything, not even the clothes on my back. He started trying to strip me down naked because at this point I had tried to reclothe myself. He started taking the clothes back off me and told me I was getting out of the house just like that. No, nothing, just my own body. Luckily, right as he was doing that, that's when the cops pulled up and started knocking on the door. And they requested that I come out. He said I wasn't here. They said, well, then we're going to have to do a search. Somebody said that she's in danger. And so he said, fine, okay, she's here, threw a t-shirt and shorts at me and told me to go talk to the cops. I walked out there, and the first thing a cop said to me was, did he hit you in the head with a metal bat? Are you okay? And I was like, no, but can I talk to you in the car? I told him that the cops were there because I wanted to get a mental health escort to the hospital, get psychiatric care. And I don't want him hearing us talk. So I told them what happened in the car, and they said, okay, wait here. About 6 more cop cars pulled up within 10 minutes. They all walked up to the door, opened it up, ripped him out, slammed him against the truck, told him he was under arrest for sexual assault and battery. And he sat there and screamed in front of the cops, when I get out of here, I'm going to kill you. Somehow, 2 days later, he was released on bail.
You're lying.
Not lying. He is still currently out. Him and that girl are together. They have a baby now together. They live with her grandmother because his parents kicked him out after that day. 2 days later, he was out and living with that girl. He went to her high school reunion right after that. Or not reunion, her graduation.
Who paid his bail?
His uncle, who's a state trooper, from what I know. And also he claimed that the injuries sustained to my face were caused by myself by punching myself repeatedly in the head, and that our intercourse was consensual and that he likes to role play rough. So that's why I had all those injuries wherever, and that's why I had the bruising to my face, because I freaked out and punched myself apparently. But yeah, they released him on bail within 2 days, and then about, I would say, probably 6 months later, the charges were dropped officially. The state dropped them. They said there was no conclusive evidence despite the rape kit and the head scans that were done and the injuries to my face sustained. They did everything. They took pictures, swabs, MRI. The detective believed me from what she said. The nurse said there was definite evidence of rape and, head trauma, to the point where I sustained a minor hairline fracture. And they, based off my mental health record, said, we believe him. She probably did it to herself, and dropped the charges. I don't know anybody, not even in their right mind, who could do something like that to themselves. And it's just, that's the worst part of this situation, is the mental health stigma, because I have a spectrum disorder and I have a history of depression. I must have beat my own head.
I need everyone to understand what you just. You were raped. You were beaten. The police were called. He was arrested. You received a medical and everything lined up with what you. Yet 6 months later, the state decided to drop all charges against him.
I just, it blew my mind. I one day got a message from him, and he told me the restraining orders dropped, my charges are dropped, I'm free. I immediately called up the detective, and they said, yeah, everything was dropped. He claimed you hit yourself, and due to your history, it was inconclusive whether or not he did it or you did it to yourself. And because you're married, it's hard to prove rape.
And they say because of your history. Was there ever any documentation of you being physically unstable or harming yourself? Or was it all depression?
It was all like suicide attempts. I have a scar right here from when I was 12. The police had to come because I slit my own wrist with a beer bottle. There's a lot of stuff like that in the police records, from them having to pick me up for emergencies like that. So to them, even though cutting was my thing and thing I have history with, it didn't seem like it was very unlikely for me to hit my own self. However, I don't see somebody sustaining injuries on their nether regions and head in a fit of rage to the extent they were. Um, I can maybe understand a couple bruises if you hit yourself, but nobody in their right mind is going to put that much damage. They're going to stop. It's instinct. Especially blunt force trauma. You know, it's one thing, like I said, with a cut, that's quick. But to sit there and beat your own head repeatedly like that would
And
take some extreme willpower.
they didn't even take this to court.
I never got summoned into court, nothing. I had to call them to find this out, that the charges were dropped. After that, I stayed in a mental health hospital and I ended up being housed by Salvation Army on discharge. They put me through college. They hooked me up with another program that helped me with housing for a little bit while I went through college. I am now a certified phlebotomist. And during my time in college, I met my boyfriend, and we've been together for a year now. He came in and helped me get all my sticks for my blood draws and stuff I had to do in class. But I had to go through about over a year of therapy to even function. I was in that shelter for a while, going through 4 days a week of therapy, 1 day of trauma therapy, 3 days of DBT for the borderline aspect, on tons of medications, going through several other types of meetings. Like I found like art therapy through the shelter, and I found they help pay for like music programs just to keep some structure in my life. It was really, really hard to cope for the longest time after that. I went from with somebody who I thought should have been the love of my life who was hurting me to I don't have my kid now and I'm homeless on the streets of Wilmington. And I'm still crawling my way back up to this day. I still haven't been able to mentally function enough to actually hold a job and get a job despite finishing college. Half the time I have a hard time getting up out of bed. My boyfriend currently is great. And my mental health puts a toll on our relationship 100%. I'm so grateful that he puts up with it, because there's times where I'm quite unreasonable, and it's all what I went through. But afterwards, I did gain, despite all that, a lot more self-confidence. I started dressing up. I started doing my makeup a lot. I started actually being able to make friends and trying to go out and do some things. Like I said, I still have the moments. I still have a hard time here and there, but it's slowly getting better, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. 3 years of I don't know if I'm gonna wake up to get my ass beat or if I'm gonna get roses and a pedicure today. I don't know if he's gonna drink and get belligerent or if he's gonna be, whatever. It was to the point where I was almost having to see a cardiologist. My heart rate was through the roof. My blood pressure was through the roof. They were saying I was almost in tachycardia at one point when I came in for a regular checkup. And to go from that And it took me 2 years to get where I am now, and I'm still barely up the ladder. It is so hard. I It's definitely a very hard decision to make to leave, because I had to leave with nothing. I had to restart from a t-shirt, pair of shorts, and a pair of flip-flops. That's all I owned. And I'm still rebuilding. We got a one-bedroom apartment together. I'm gonna be moving with my father soon, and he said he's gonna try to be a little bit encouraging with me to help try to get me motivated to get myself straight once I'm there. So I definitely got a lot more support systems now. People are coming back into my life. Um, and I'm very grateful for all that. But anybody that decides to leave a domestic violence type relationship, abusive relationship in general, like, it takes a lot of strength. It definitely does. This is one of the hardest things I've had to do in my life, was actually leave my abuser. 100%. But it's definitely worth it.
Where's your son now?
Right now he's with his father. During all this time, um, me and him got in an argument over a tax return. He owed me 2 years back support, and they took his taxes. And at this time, he was also starting to get the hint of what was going on at the house. He decided, instead of at least being truthful, he could have probably gotten the same result being truthful, but he decided to go into court and say that I was on cocaine, um, and got emergency custody. I went through 4 months of drug testing with DFS to prove that I wasn't on cocaine. The only thing I had in my system was marijuana. And and then I went back to court, and they were like, well, despite you proving him wrong, your son's been with him for how much time now? 4 or 5 months. He's used to it. He's going to maintain residential custody. After that, my child's father decided, after like 3 visits with my son, to leave and just block me and not tell me where he moved. Told me I wasn't allowed to see him, just blocked me. And that's about the time I went back with my ex for the last time, because I was just like, well, I left him to get my son back, and get out of that situation because he was using it against me. Might as well go back. I don't have my kid. He ran off. Nobody knows where he's at, you know.
And to this, because this is what, 1, 2 years later?
Yeah. After I left him, I went and tried to get a hold of my child's father to be like, can I at least have visits with him? Can I talk with him? Something. And got straight ignored. I went and filed in court for a basically contempt hearing, because either way, there was an order saying I should have been allowed to see my son. He violated it before I even went back with my ex. So I went in, filed for contempt, and the judge basically said, same thing. He's used to being with your baby's father, so he's going to stay with him, but you get visitation back. Behave, bad boy. To my child's father. So he still lives with him. I get 4 days a month with my son. I get every other weekend for 2 overnights. That's up right now.
And did the judge say anything about that, the possibility of that changing in the future?
What the judge said was that, to my child's father, you constantly lie about her and waste my time. And then you do something like this and then have to, make her file and then waste my time. It was like, you two need to learn as life changes to compromise and work with each other. You don't have to go to court to settle this stuff if you guys just grow up. He said after this hearing, we're moving jurisdiction anyways, so I'm not going to see you. I'm just going to put back in place what I already ordered last time. You two behave. And that was basically the court hearing. But to be honest, at this point in my life, I am not stable enough to have him full time. And I am at least woman enough to admit that. I don't have a full-time job right now. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I'm still not settled. I still haven't recovered mentally. And so honestly, at this point, he is better off with his father for a little bit until I get my stuff right again. So I'm not really pushing too hard for anything more at this point.
Before we go, what advice do you have for anyone currently in an abusive relationship?
There are resources to help you. You just have to be willing to look. It's scary to leave, but at the same time, you're putting your life in somebody else's hands. You're giving up control of your own autonomy to these people by staying with them. You're letting them control you. I think it's well worth being scared, being nervous, going out of your comfort zone to get the help and get away, rather than staying there. Like I said, as scary as it was leaving and as unsure as it was, I had to sleep on a sidewalk for a couple days. There are people that care and are willing to help. You just got to find the resources, but it's completely worth it at the end. So just do it. Leave. That's my best advice. It's going to be messy either way. There's no clean way to break off with somebody who's narcissistic like that. And until you rip the Band-Aid off, you're never going to know if there's anything better out there for you.
Well said, sis. Well said. Y'all, I told y'all keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times, because it was going to be a bumpy ride. Rebekah, so much for taking your time, for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, honest, open, transparent, so that we can help others see that your life is worth more, and it's always better. Thank you guys always for tuning in. This has been another amazing episode of the Confidence Way podcast. I want y'all to remember, keep showing up, keep sharing love, keep shining your light. And as always, we gon' confetti, 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 confetti.